Hi, folks. Mr. Powell coming to you from Corfu as the tourist season is about to kick off. And as you can see, the Teslas are coming out of hibernation. Shh, don't wake the Teslas. All right, I have Kai, the comedian, for you with his full interview explaining Chinese history. I hope you enjoy.
All right, hi, this is Scott Powell, the historian and teacher at Knowable World. And I'm here with Kai, who is one of my upper elementary students. And Kai is going to be teaching all the rest of you out there Chinese history. So, what we're going to do is I'm just going to interview Kai, and he's going to show off what it is that students get out of the Knowable World program. And we're doing Asia, Africa, and the world we live in this year. And that's a part of a 3-year program rotation. And in this particular segment, we're studying 5 major cultural blocks. Kai will have more to say about that in a moment. They are in particular China, Japan, the Islamic world, India, and finally sub-Saharan Africa. So that's quite a lot to take in. And Kai's already working his way, as we are the whole class, working our way through our 3rd unit. The Chinese history material is not exactly fresh, but on the other hand, one of the things we do at Knowable is we make sure that students understand the importance of what it is that they're learning, and we emphasize that by reviewing the content, and especially with regard to certain material, I place emphasis on it to the extent that students are quite clearly understand that it's something that they should be focusing on retaining in the long run. And so I think you'll find that Kai is able to recollect and recite a lot of pretty interesting things about Chinese history, especially if you consider we're talking about an upper elementary student. So, all right, Kai, let's dive in. China is our topic, but as always, what we do at Knowable World is we focus on the history of the world. Specifically, we do it in such a way where the goal is not merely to memorize a bunch of stuff about the past, but rather to understand the world we live in. So at Knowable World, history is the revelation and explanation of the world we live in. So let's start with that, right? Because that's the context. We have to know where something like China fits. So go ahead and tell us the standard Knowable World formula for organizing the world we live in our minds.
Yeah. So the world we live in is a interconnected agglomeration, nearly 200 countries organized into 10 major cultural blocks, mainly controlled by 5 cardinal cultures in which the United States has primacy.
All right, fantastic. Okay. So 10 major cultural blocks are the way we organize the what is otherwise a plethora of 200 countries. Please let everybody know, what are those 10 cultural blocks?
United States, China, Russia, Japan, India, Islamic world, Anglosphere, Iberosphere, Sub-Saharan Africa, and
The European Union, no
oh yeah,
problem.
the European
When
Union.
you're doing it off the top of your head like that, sometimes you got 10 and you forget which one you skipped.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. So we've got these 10. And you mentioned in your formulation, right, that some of the cultures of the world are cardinal cultures. Can you explain what you understand by that?
Cardinal cultures are more like they kind of affect history more than other cultures. Like they're kind of like a big part of the world we live in. Like America is obviously the biggest one, and that's why most people speak English. And yeah, they just have an effect on the world more
They
than
have the
others.
biggest effect on the world, okay, most important cultures. And China is one of those. So
Yeah.
that's an important thing for us to understand at the outset. And tell us, how did China become one of the cardinal cultures of the world? The short version, in other words, most recently, because it certainly was not always. So what's China to the world today?
China is a post-Maoist culture, and it's like struggling to kind of get unhumiliated.
Okay, we're going to get to the humiliation part soon enough, right? But you said post-Maoist. Can you explain what that means? Because that's not a term that most people will be familiar with.
Yeah. The Chinese used to have like these set of answers that they thought they would fix something in their past, and then they realized it did not fix it. And so, yeah, Deng Xiaoping had to come up.
Right, the set of answers was called Maoism, which was
Maoism.
whose answers? Whose answers was that?
Mao Zedong.
Mao Zedong. Okay, good. And then along comes this guy called Deng Xiaoping. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So Deng Xiaoping arrived 1978, and he came to power, and his great speech was, "To get rich is glorious," which allows the people of China to like, he's encouraging them to trade with the world.
Right, which is really weird because Maoism is a form of what?
It's a form of communism and Marxism.
So under communism, was China a cardinal culture? Could the people of China trade with the world?
No.
Not a bit, right? Okay, so along comes this supposedly communist leader. He says to get rich is glorious. What has been the outcome?
They have gotten a lot richer. Like China was originally a very poor country, and now they have like this giant city and is now the second most powerful culture. But now they're kind of like, they're not Maoism, they're just post-Maoism.
There you go, right? So post means what?
It means they used to be.
Yeah, it means after. And the question is, of course, what exactly are they now? It's not easy to answer. Okay, how can most people feel the reality of China's importance in their daily lives?
Most people can really feel it really in their house. Like practically everything is made of in China. I think this desk is actually made of China.
Yeah, probably, right? So exactly, just turn something over and you see those three words and it says it all. Okay, right. And so, okay, post-Maoist China is one of the cardinal cultures in the world. It's now got a big economy, it's great big cities, as you mentioned, and now militarily powerful. It's got nuclear weapons. All right, wow. All right, we're dealing with a big part of the history of our world that we need to understand how it got to be that way. Okay, so let's talk just a little bit more about what Deng Xiaoping did starting in 1978. This to get rich is glorious formula is an example of something. In other words, here's a guy who has all the power of the Communist Party, and he's doing something very strange. How do you explain it, and how does Chinese history help us to understand that?
Well, first of all, what Deng Xiaoping is doing is being a benevolent despot to his people. He has all the power, but he doesn't use it to, I don't know, buy a big bath and expensive bubble soap.
Well, probably did, but on the other hand, okay. Okay, so what does it mean to be a benevolent despot?
Means you wish the people good, like you treat kind of everyone equal just because you have all the power. You're the big fish controlling all the little fish, but you don't eat the little fish.
You don't eat them. Yeah. Okay, so you try to take care of them and let them live their own lives. All right, let's now go back all the way to the beginning of China's history and find the origins. Tell everybody about the origins of this story, please.
Yeah, so China is the oldest culture today, besides Egypt, but that's long gone. It started all the way back circa 2200 BC. And back then, they were known as like the Middle Kingdom of East Asia. They saw that everyone really wanted to come to China, and they saw that like all the people from all over the world, like, and eventually the Europeans started to show up, and then they just said, "Oh, it's just another reason why we're the best."
True enough. But don't forget to tell us the origin story. Tell us, where does this benevolent despotism concept seem to emerge and really take over?
Oh, yeah. So the first sign of benevolent despotism starts with a man named Shun. He was the emperor, and he was gonna, like, I guess, retire soon, and he had to pick like a hire. Instead of picking his own son, which is like the traditional way, he picked one of his generals who helped move the Yellow River, I believe, instead of his own son to be the next
Okay. And this
emperor.
man became known as, or
Yu.
was known as, he was Yu the Great. Yeah, Yu had worked on, what we call engineering projects of a sort, right? To, as you say, control the Yellow River. And that showed what? I mean, he literally worked on this. What did that show?
That showed a lot of benevolent despotism.
Yeah, okay, in essence, right? But this is not an easy thing to practice. What does Chinese history look like because of the presence of this premise of benevolent despotism? What I mean is, what's the pattern that emerged because of the challenges involved in benevolent despotism?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so usually the pattern was, like, through China's whole entire history, it seems that, like, after Yu was chosen, the whole pattern of Chinese history goes like this. So you have, like, benevolent despot, people start to rebel, people don't like him, they kick him out of power, another benevolent despot comes, people rebel, kick him out of power, another benevolent despot comes, and that's practically the whole history of China.
Yeah, rinse, repeat, right? We call it
Yeah.
the dynastic cycle, basically. It's a pattern that's in evidence for the entire 4,000 years that we know. And does the pattern just continue to this day, or is there more to say? I mean, Confucius tried to solve that problem. Didn't really, of course, because it's not really solvable. Why isn't it solvable?
Well, it's tricky. Like on the chart, the chart goes like that. At the top there's the benevolent despot. But over time, they're in power. But we have a saying here. It's like power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So it's very hard to fix that because it's just the way humans act.
There you go, right? It's human nature. So we have the original rulers, and we have Confucius trying to organize the system of benevolent despotism, and it does last for thousands of years. But modern Chinese history can't be explained simply by reference to China being this benevolent despotism, perceiving itself as the Middle Kingdom. Something else has happened, right? What has brought China to where it is today?
Yeah, so the really downfall of China, which is where they really couldn't really call themselves the Middle Kingdom anymore, is when the Europeans showed up. The Europeans showed up, they wanted to trade with China, and so, yeah, the Chinese were like, oh, these guys, they're from all the way across Europe. Look at us, we're so big and powerful. And they started the flow of trade. Gold and silver from Europe was going to China because all the Europeans wanted to buy all the Middle Kingdom's jewelry, pinky rings, and all the like stuff from China was going to Europe, and it wasn't really going back; it was just going one way. And so the Europeans said, "Want to buy some of our stuff?" And the China was like, "No, we don't want your smelly Europe stuff."
Exactly. Okay, so what happened?
So, like, the Europeans started selling the Chinese opium, and the Chinese emperor, being a benevolent despot, didn't like that. So they started the First Opium War, which also leads to the Century of Humiliation.
Indeed. Give us the dates, though. We're a
Oh
history
yeah,
class. We got to do the dates.
yeah. So the First Opium War started 1839 to 42.
Okay. So, in other words, who won?
The Europeans won, which made China be like, dang it.
What happened? Specifically the British, though, right? Because we
Yeah,
gotta, we gotta be specific. Okay, so
yeah,
the British trounced the Chinese, and what happened? You mentioned the century of humiliation that follows.
yeah. So the Chinese were like, because everyone thought they were the Middle Kingdom. Oh, they're so powerful. But when these Europeans come from all the way to Europe, they realize we're not the Middle Kingdom. We're as weak as, I don't know, uh, some country that no one ever heard of.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what did they have? What did they have to do?
Yeah, so they obviously had to find a new ruler to try and fix that. And I think in the mix there was like this guy that said he was Jesus's brother or something, and he brought like a message
Yes,
in all the
indeed.
chaos. Yeah.
Yes, during the Taiping Rebellion, there was a lot of really strange ideas floating around. Yeah, I believe his name was Hong Chuquan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and and then there were more wars. Of course, pretty much everybody was picking on China, including what's a very interesting example.
Oh, oh yeah. China's little brother, Japan. Little
Okay,
brother.
all
And then,
right. So give us like the big
oh
scoop
yeah.
when it comes to Japan beating up on China.
Yeah, so it all started like in 1937, and which was World War II in Asia, and China and Japan started picking on China, and China lost to Japan. Japan was like this little ant compared to the big cat China, and yet the ant just bites the cat, and the cat goes wah wah wah. Yeah, so that ended up with America having to save China to beat up Japan, and how they did it: two atomic bombs and blew up two large cities in Japan.
There we go. Okay, end of the Japanese Empire.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, of course, being saved from Japan was not enough to
yeah,
end China's century of humiliation. How did it come to an end?
yeah. It came to an end at the end of the Chinese Civil War, 1927 to 49, and yeah, with Mao Zedong winning, and he was kind of copying Marxism, I believe, in Russia, and which is
Marxism, but as adapted by Lenin, right?
yeah,
Okay.
Lenin,
And how
and
did that go?
very badly started Maoism, and yeah, China. I, really, this guy killed more people in China than the Europeans ever did to China.
Yeah.
I believe it was like in
More
the
people than
millions.
any foreign aggressor ever did. It's quite astounding that the people of China don't have an utter and absolute hatred of Mao Zedong, but they thought that he was trying to, in what way can we, if we're being very generous, in what way can we interpret Maoism, in light of Chinese history?
Well, I guess at least Mao Zedong was actually trying to help China. Like the people believe that he was trying to help at least.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's about all we can say. Whether he really was or not, I quite frankly am not convinced. And it would really take an expert in Chinese history and specifically a biographer to tell us if indeed he was trying to do good or, which I think is quite likely, actually really did hate the Chinese people and wanted to punish them for being so humiliating. It's really actually quite a tragic story. But okay, as you said, along comes Deng Xiaoping and implements the new formula. So China's done very well by comparison, clearly
Yeah.
since 1978. What would be your wrap up when it comes to China? Like, where is it at? Is there unfinished business, or is China happy? What can we expect from China in the future?
I would say China has kind of like peaked. It's at the top, and I think the Chinese don't want that. They want to be the Middle Kingdom again. But with America around, I don't think that'll happen. Uh, So yeah, I would say they kind of like peaked, and I would say it's kind of gonna go downhill because their population's shrinking. Even though there's so many of them, they are shrinking slowly but surely.
Okay, okay. But what do you think they're going to do about that? If they discover that things are not going as well as they want, can we expect something from them in terms of, are they fully unhumiliated at this point, or do they still have work to do?
Hopefully, there won't be another war, but they could if America, I don't know, gets stuck in another war. That may be China's big chance to try and like get back at America and show the world that they're the boss. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, specifically, I think it's the Taiwan issue that has most people worried, but it could be even bigger than that because we also know that China wants revenge on Japan and has never
Yeah.
forgiven Japan, and so yeah, it's a pretty tense stuff. All right, cool. So we've talked about one of the cardinal cultures, and yeah, we mapped out Chinese history from start to finish, basically from Shun and Yu, circa 2200 BC, all the way through to the post-Maoist era that we live in. So, Kai, thank you for your demonstrated knowledge and also a little bit of your opining there, your stylistic presentation. Yeah, very, very good. Always warranted. So, cool. All right. So this is hopefully the first of many interviews with historian Kai. All right, team. Bye for now. Thanks, Kai.